I mean, I think in my own schooling experience, I've often heard the word autism or autistic thrown around as an insult. Which I think has never been helpful to anybody. Because I think it creates a lot of stereotype around it. And I think just a lack of safety for people on the spectrum to feel like they can be themselves. I think there's definitely been more education, more talk about neurodiversity and autism, and I think keeping that conversation open on a very personal level, peer-to-peer, is important. Because I think if people had more understanding about what autism looks like, how it presents, because it's such a complex type of neurodiversity,
I have a different way of thinking and a different way of experiencing the world.
I have a different communication style.
My values and needs might be a bit different from yours.
I have unique sensory experiences.
Autistic culture, it's the natural tendencies, preferences, and social norms of autistic people, and it differs for each. How well do you know autistic culture at school? If you're not autistic, the best way to learn is through the perspectives of those who live it. And because every autist is unique, ask each what it's personally like for them. Don't assume that every autist you meet fits into one stereotypical box. Each of us is wonderfully original. Many of us, though, share some common autistic culture, and learning about it can clear up some common misunderstandings. So get to know autistic culture better, because you may find that there are classmates who would make such great friends if you understood them better. Safety is a basic need that everyone must have to live a happy, healthy life. Many autists find safety within predictable and steady routines, knowing what to expect when possible, and having time to visualize and prepare for what's coming is something that our minds need more of. It keeps stress levels in check so we can feel more in control of our lives.
Before we realized I was autistic, I would just come up to her every day when I was a kid and just ask her, "What are we doing today?" And I would do this every day. She would just be like, "Why are you asking?" And it's just because I wanted to know, what are we doing?
That's the way I feel when people cancel plans like at the last minute or something happens last minute. It just throws off like my entire equilibrium I have, and it makes me very like unsettled.
Like if one little minor thing happens that we don't expect, it throws everything off. I mean, it can get a little difficult.
For me, a predictable schedule feels safe.
Another piece of common autistic culture is that many of us share a bottom-up style of thinking when taking in information. Bottom-up thinking starts with a keen focus on the smaller details of something. Those small details also include a good deal of sensory information, and they become facts that become categorized in the mind. Then those facts are used to support a meaningful, bigger picture. For example, designing a computer program from scratch requires bottom-up thinking. Many autists have minds that gravitate towards the details of things first, because we naturally tend to zoom in to analyze all the small parts of a whole.
I mean, it's just a different way of, I guess, looking at the world. And I think it involves a lot of, like, putting things together and, like, kind of synthesis skills. Like, you know, building up to some things.
So I tend to notice things that other people might glance over or skip.
I have like perfect pitch and can play by ear. Being able to, in music, like I'm very good at like understanding like the patterns and that kind of stuff, that's the order and that kind of thing.
This is the reason why I needed extra time on tests, because I notice everything, and the way my mind works, it just works different from a neurotypical person's brain, in which I notice literally everything and I can get caught up very easily in information that's not, like, needed, even though I think it is.
When autistic people are passionate about something, we often go into hyperfocus. This means we get completely absorbed into the thing.
I'm not trying to ignore you.
Hyperfocus stems from monotropic thinking. It's when the brain zooms in all of its attention on just one thing at a time. The focus is narrow, it's laser concentrated, and it's kind of like the light of a flashlight.
Like, time just flies. You didn't eat for like 12 hours or whatever it is, and you're just such in a good way. A lot of people think, oh, dude, that's terrible, but sometimes having that out-of-body experience and being in the zone is the best feeling.
The passion that comes into the stuff that I do is a pure result of hyperfocus.
There's so many times that if I am really into a story, I can just read for hours and hours and hours and hours, and I will block everything else out. If you ask me what was going on around me, I'll have no idea.
If I get hyper-focused on something, I want to get it done.
Autistic inertia. It takes a tremendous act of willpower to switch tasks immediately when our brains are deeply focused on something. If we're asked to stop without warning, it's like trying to stop a speeding train.
Give people the space to transition out of that thing. It might just be a longer amount of time. Be met with a little bit of aggravation, but to know where that's coming from, I think, is important. Which stems back to that it's not you, it's just having to stop what you're doing that might be aggravating or might be causing that response. I think when I'm engaging in my passion, I think just like very in the zone, and it is very fulfilling for me.
My current passion is Zumba. Zumba classes.
It's good to be doing something that I know and like I know all the answers to, and like something that can actually be applied to the real world. That feeling of gratification.
Tabletop games. That is my thing. I currently have a 71-page document. It is something I have been putting together, creating my own thing, a set of rules, story, narrative, way of operating everything. Yeah, that is my thing.
Finding out what your autistic classmates' passions are is a great way to break the ice. Perhaps you know their passions already, and maybe you share some of those passions too. Having shared interests often leads to a strong foundation for great friendships.
My passion is sports.
Another passion of mine is helping others understand what autism is.
Passions can change over time, and sometimes they can last a lifetime. For some of us, it takes a while to find our passion, but when we do, it often shapes our identity, creates a sense of calm and joy, and gives us confidence. Understand that passions are an important piece of autistic people's lives. So ask us about them. When it comes to our passions, we may be pretty eager to share them with you. Some of us might have a tendency to do a little info dumping.
Talking about my interests feels humanizing. It feels so good.
Info dumping is the tendency to enthusiastically share a large amount of information on a topic in a very detailed way.
I try not to do that as much anymore. Like I try to like slowly figure out how much the other person is, interested in the conversation.
Info dumping on electronic music for some reason helps me regulate more.
It wasn't necessarily about something I was passionate about all the time. It also could have been about like my life, things I experienced, just like dumping in general information. And the thing was, if someone would have told me, hey, can we change the topic or can you stop, I would have stopped.
Some autists can get so excited about what they're sharing that it can be just hard to tell if their friend isn't as excited about it. So just tell us. But know that info dumping is something that many of us love to do freely, especially when there's someone to mutually info dump with. Autists have varied experiences in terms of learning and in memory. Some of us have exceptional long-term memory for dates, facts, and maybe details of past events. Some of us have superior visual memory for images, maps, and patterns.
I have a very good memory.
I have a memory for both facts and stuff that interests me.
I have a photographic memory.
I can remember top speeds of different vehicles, like very specific numbers and stuff.
Having an incredible memory for things that matter to us can serve as a superpower. But some of us may also struggle with working memory, like remembering verbal instructions that have multiple steps. Some of us might have trouble organizing our ideas or our thoughts at times. Remember, we're all different. Things that can help us in school: visual aids, maps, schedules, and breaking down information into smaller, more manageable parts. And visuals are often pretty helpful.
Because for me, I'm a visual learner, so sometimes having the instructor send me more visualized notes on what we're talking about really, really helps me.
Many autistic people naturally understand and use a direct, literal communication style. It doesn't rely on tone, and it doesn't rely on body language. This means that we say exactly what we mean, and we might interpret others' words quite literally if we don't know you well. Stop means stop, go means go, yes means yes, and no means no. Hinting at something or using sarcasm can be difficult for some of us to understand. And some of us have learned to detect it, but it might not come naturally.
And just, I need things to be understood in a literal way.
Like some metaphors are like, I don't get that, but I can memorize the meaning of that.
A lot of people say like, listen to what your heart wants when, like, what? My heart is a pump.
And like, if it's someone I'm not familiar with, maybe I don't get their sarcasm like I would get my parents or other people's. So just being very direct and literal is my communication style. And in my humble opinion, I think the world should be like that.
Also, many autists are known to speak their truth when you ask them. If you want to know how your friend is feeling, clearly ask them. Isn't it nice to avoid mind games?
Your average autistic person will look at you and bluntly say exactly what's going through their head with next to no filter, and they usually don't even like lying. So ask them
and believe them.
Be open to different communication styles with your autistic peers and friends. Some autists are more comfortable having conversations by text, simply because it allows us more time needed to process and to respond. Some autistic people may favor to socialize on online platforms where a conversation can be read and written out. These communication ways feel safe because they can eliminate misunderstandings that can happen between neurotypicals and autists, and because it eliminates the nuances of having to decode neurotypical prosody, body language, and tone of voice.
I prefer to have conversations with others through text. I can think of what I want to say, and I don't have to come up with something on the fly.
Well, I know for me, I've definitely found that, like, I tend to need to focus really hard in, like, more auditory, heavy situations.
Many of us truly do enjoy socializing with our family, with our friends, because these are people that we trust will not judge any social nuances that might occur. So please don't judge us.
It just does not make sense sometimes that I need to say hi or good morning, because if I just by being there, it means that I respect them.
Sometimes I don't know how to start a conversation, and I don't talk about my interests a lot until somebody brings it up. I wait until somebody asks me.
Communication is a set of expectations, and there are rules that we can choose to follow, or we can choose to not. I prefer to not.
Social misunderstandings are the worst. There's a theory called the double empathy problem, and it suggests that misunderstandings that happen between autistic and neurotypical people arise because each of us has a different way of interpreting the world, and both sides contribute to the misunderstandings that happen.
From people that tell me, they're like, yeah, they ended up getting mad at me because I kept on interrupting them accidentally, and they really didn't understand it.
Teachers have definitely misread my way of presenting as not being interested, being bored, or not engaged. That would be the opposite. I'm just trying to focus really hard.
They would think I was too loud, and really it's more me being passionate about the situation that's going on. We get frequently misunderstood. You have the right intentions, but you don't show it the right way. And it's still sometimes I still think about that from once in a while when he said that.
Think of the situation as a Mac computer trying to exchange info with a PC computer, or a gas-powered car versus an electric car's way of operating. Both are great at what they do, but their systems simply operate differently. This is also the case with human minds.
I was kind of accused that I wasn't showing empathy in the great emotions, but I was really empathizing a lot.
If someone tells me something bad, like I'm going to think about it, but I'm not going to show it with my facial expressions. Yeah, but sometimes autistic people are actually more empathetic. They just don't show it.
That I have a different way of speaking than other people.
Due to the unique ways that us autists take in the world, it can be harder to register things, like the tone of your voice or your body language. So go easy on us if there's a misunderstanding. Remember, the way that you read our body language might be your misunderstanding too.
But sometimes I'll jump in to get my point across. But the intent is not to be rude. The intent is not to be disrespectful.
Many autists care very much about the people around them. We're not wired to communicate the way neurotypicals do, though some of us learn to mimic your ways, and many of us are still learning to understand your behaviors.
Socialization for me, as I've kind of realized, is a game, and I don't necessarily know the rules.
As we try to figure you out, we'd like you to learn to accept our autistic norms in communication too, and know that neither neurotype is right or best. For some autists, making eye contact with another person can be uncomfortable, overwhelming, and anxiety-provoking. Imagine looking into someone's eyes and instead of having a pleasant, filtered experience of only those necessary details, you take in everything, every little piece of information.
So I can't really maintain eye contact, just not for really long extended periods of time. It feels too intimate, and that's not a relationship I want to have with everyone, honestly.
But I would say it does take a lot of courage and a lot of confidence to actually do proper eye contact.
Because when I'm looking at someone's eyes, I almost blank out.
It feels a bit strange. I usually look at the entire person's face, never strictly their eyes. And also, this is not atypical in the animal kingdom. A huge amount of animals looking straight into another animal's eye is a sign of aggression. That's actually how it is for a huge amount of animals.
Because I feel like the whole eye contact thing is a very Western and American thing also. Because there's other cultures where looking someone in the eyes is an act of aggression.
At times I feel uncomfortable with eye contact.
Most of the time, I don't make eye contact, but I'm still listening.
Unexpected changes, whether they be large or small, can be difficult and highly emotional for autistic people. This is because a whole lot of our energy goes into pre-planning how we're going to personally cope in any foreseen situation.
I think pop quizzes in school are a great example of unexpected change. There's not much time to adjust to the situation.
Imagine that you put time and energy into preparing for an upcoming test. You studied and studied, and on the test day, the teacher unexpectedly announced that you would be taking a different test that you didn't study for. How would you feel? It's just plain survival for us to plan for life's moments in advance. It creates stability.
So some people are okay with small changes or big changes like me. Some people are very attached to small changes, whether it's seating arrangement.
I think teachers and students can let their fellow classmates know things ahead of time. What would you do if you had a fire drill? Give them a chance to adjust to the situation and have their feelings be adjusted as well.
If there's something like I think I missed, like if there was a performance that I wanted to go to for a friend or something and I just didn't write it down on my schedule by accident, and then I'm like, oh wait, that's tonight. I think that would cause stress because then I would have to like rearrange like what I was going to do.
Kind of frustrating when things kind of change from how I thought they were going to go.
Please don't put neurotypical expectations on us. Don't tell us that our difficult moments are too small to get upset about. And understand that we feel things intensely, and we might just need more time to transition to a new plan and change how we'll approach those situations. So please support us instead of teaching us to suppress the way we really feel. A meltdown is an outward response to an intense amount of stress or discomfort. It can look like crying, yelling, nervous pacing, muscle tensing, or just losing our cool.
It can feel like the end of the world. My whole body and mind shut down.
It can be embarrassing for us if it happens in a place like school, especially if we feel we're being judged. Autistic brains carry a higher level of connectivity, which make us more sensitive to our surroundings. It means our brain and nervous systems can become overwhelmed more easily.
I've had my fair share where I felt a shutdown, borderline meltdown at school and was made fun of a lot.
In those situations, you need to give them time and space.
If you see us in a meltdown, just not only give us space, but help the teacher if needed.
Don't treat this as like a situation where you can just like flip a switch and fix it. From what I've seen, it seems to be something that people need to write out. It is an emotional response, and you have to kind of wait for the tide to go out, so to speak.
A shutdown is when someone might inwardly escape from the distress they're experiencing. Like zoning out, disassociating, becoming withdrawn, or it might include physical symptoms such as stomach aches, headaches, or fatigue. It just means that we're having an incredibly difficult time, and we need others' understanding.
I generally am on the shutdown side of things, and in my experience, I would say just kind of giving people the space to have those moments. First thing would be not to take personally, and then the second thing I think is a lot of people would be like, well, let's go find help, let's go do this, and sometimes that's helpful, sometimes the person just needs to stay there, kind of recognizing what would be helpful.
Masking is not limited to something that only autistic people do, but it's one topic that many twice exceptional autists say is a big part of their lives.
Masking is when I pretend to be someone I'm not, just to fit in with friends.
I mask because I don't want to risk getting bullied.
I would say I'm masking every single day. It's a non-negotiable that I have to live with, and I'm okay with that.
Oh yeah, every day. I mask every day just because I don't know how they would react if I brought up that I'm autistic.
It's a very neurotypical dominated world, and it's just easier, unfortunately, to mask at times. But even more so around my non-autistic friends, when people really see me, they'll like distance themselves, not communicate with me, I'll be left wondering why, and it's not worth it to me.
The reason why I need to mask is, it is survival, it is pure survival. So we need to appear as conforming to the neurotypical norms of society.
Unfortunately, it's sometimes the only way to be accepted around others who carry stigma about autism. Masking can take a huge toll on our health and well-being over time.
I think I've masked and or code switched a lot. I think in new situations, I like to play it safe and take a step back and then just kind of get the vibe of the room. I think that definitely has a lot to do with how safe I feel in an environment and what is the general feelings of someone who's neurodivergent. Are there neurodivergent people in the room?
So make it feel okay for an autistic peer or friend to act as their authentic self in your presence, without social judgment. Imagine that the fries you just ordered had 30 times the usual amount of salt. Would you be able to stomach them? Imagine that a classmate just doused an entire bottle of perfume on their wrist instead of just a spritz. Would you be able to feel well sitting next to them? These are just some examples of everyday heightened sensory experiences. Taste, smell, touch, sight, and sound are intense. And sometimes even painful. So what may be comfortable for you might be excruciating for your autistic friend to tolerate. That's why some of us are picky eaters or have difficulty with how certain clothes feel.
So with hearing, I've always been very sensitive to loud noises, and it's just very anxiety-inducing for me.
The sense of smell is something that I hold very deep because smell brings a lot of memories.
I've had very sensitive taste buds.
I've been eating almost the same dinner for the past 8 years.
On the flip side, some autists might process sensory information much less than most. Like walking on snow barefoot might not be an issue. Autists can have both of these opposing sensory differences. And since every autistic person is different, ask your autistic classmates and friends, what are their experiences like?
I would say that I think sensory sensitivities play a lot into overwhelm, which for me is leads to shutdown, for some could be meltdown. So I think just especially in a school, with teachers, with peers, with friends, if someone feels comfortable, communicating what things in particular are going to make them feel uncomfortable or overwhelmed.
Many autists manage their strong sensory experiences and their heightened way of taking in the world by stimming. Stimming is really any repetitive behavior that helps to soothe, regulate, or cope with just how our body and mind are feeling. Humming, flapping, rocking back and forth, twirling hair, and listening to the same great song on repeat. These are just some examples.
I think stimming is important. It helps me focus. I would also say I do it pretty unconsciously, so sometimes I'm not even aware of it.
Stimming regulates the body during anxiety, excitement, boredom, deep thinking, and really emotions of all kinds.
I like to make my hands go like this. I do that every time I was excited, or I would just stim on a word. I'd say the same word 50 times.
To me, it's just kind of a way of coping. It's just kind of part of living. It's part of keeping yourself comfortable.
I think when my mind is overworking or underworking, it's like balancing my energy.
Stimming is important to me because it relieves stress and nervousness.
Let's make this understood. Whatever kind, it's so important for autistic people, and anyone really, to be able to freely stim as needed, and and not feel that we need to suppress it, simply because it doesn't look like your neurotypical ways. The school environment has a great impact on students' well-being. Just like certain plants need a particular amount of light, water, and ideal conditions to grow, we need a school environment that allows us to thrive. Autistic students need acceptance, understanding, and accommodations for unique learning differences. Many autistic students find themselves in learning environments where our artistic culture is often misunderstood. Here are just a few things that we suggest for ideal school environments.
I would say, first and foremost, like individuality in the education model, having just a flexible learning environment that meets people where they're at in different areas.
I think definitely smaller classrooms.
For each student to be able to learn things combined with their interests.
Having a sensory room to calm our body down and take as much time as we need.
More comfortable chairs.
There's some teachers that I have that are just really sensitive to autistic people, like they know their needs and stuff.
Having warmer lights, not bright white lights.
A good temperature, a room temperature. My brain will be occupied by feeling cold.
Trusting us when we advocate for ourselves.
A quieter space, very chill environment.
Less noise.
I think teaching executive function was really important for me.
And just direct communication. The perfect school environment would not have stressful exams. So I wouldn't have tests. I would have like projects or papers or anything that's not an exam.
I think if everyone had a layer of understanding of different neurodivergence and what that looks like across the board, for any type of neurodivergence, that would help.
All autistic people have different personalities and things that make us all unique. But did you know that there are some common twice exceptional autistic traits that can be strong foundations for great friendships?
I always keep my word and I never turn my back on anyone as well.
When they ask for my opinion, I really want to be honest. If I say a white lie, I feel guilty afterward because friendships are based on trust.
I tend to be very loyal.
And there's no manipulation or trying to guess what the other person is hinting at.
I feel that I am super dependable because if I say to a person that I'm going to meet with them, I will not cancel because I know that the other person expects me to be there and wants to meet with me.
Sometimes it's just really good to have somebody who just says, maybe just say what you need.
I think we help people view things in a very logical, rational way. Definitely just being direct, I think, has been beneficial to my friendships.
If you're a good friend to autistic people, they're going to be a better friend to you.
I'm so focused on being there for the other person that I can often forget to be there for myself. Friendships are really important to people on the spectrum.
You might see a twice exceptional autistic peer at school, looking less social and more solitary than others. Knowing what you've learned so far about autistic culture should shed some light as to some possible reasons why. The truth is, we all want to have true, supportive friends by our side. Just like anybody else, we all want to be heard and validated. Here's what we want friends to know.
I would say myself being on the spectrum and having friends on the spectrum, the level of communication that you have with someone is quite important. Just having to recognize and check in with people on where they're at.
When you see us having a bad day, be there for us. I just want people to understand, hey, we're just like you. I know our brains are different, but we really, really just want to be accepted.
Often we are concerned about like bigger problems in this world outside of the school.
Treat them as a friend who has quirks and make sure they feel included.
My advice on making friends or staying friends with someone on the spectrum, in school, in a school setting, I think would be that you can always ask. You can always invite someone, and the worst thing they can do is say no. To put in that effort of making sure someone feels welcome and trying to include them, even if, and then they can always say, no, I actually don't want to. But I think that effort goes a long way.
Be direct and communicate with us, because we don't understand things that are wrong implicitly, or like, you should have done this, you should have done that, so why didn't you tell me?
Accept us as we are. Learn more about us.
Understand their way of thinking and their rules. Do not take things personally.
Try to understand the interest that they have and how strong their interest is. I think those are the easiest ways you can get to know a classmate on the autism spectrum.
A really good way to start a conversation is introducing yourself and then asking like, hey, what are some of your favorite topics you like to talk about?
Just let them be themselves.
Just find their interest. Like, if you have a common interest, definitely highlight that.
If you hear something about them that is different than a lot of people you know, tell them you like that. They like directness. Be direct. Treat it like any other friendship. Make sure they know that they matter.
No one experiences the world in the exact same way. Having respect for neurodiversity and for others' lived experiences, such as the ones in this video, will open doors to more friendships, more opportunities, and more open-minded ways of seeing things. Here's some thoughts that we would like to leave you with.
Social rules are preconceptions that we have due to our culture. They are not actual rules. What you perceive as rude or not rude will vary from person to person.
Even if you feel for us, like, even if people say, like, oh, I'm so sorry, or I support you, wow, you're so brave, you're so strong. I'm not brave or strong. This is how I live. This is my brain. Like, it's really condescending to say things like that.
Don't infantile an autistic peer because they think differently. Many of us have one or more specific abilities that exceed what you're capable of. Show respect for differences.
Realize that every autistic person is different from the other. View each person as a territory, as a country that I need to explore from the beginning.
We want others to see the true side of us.
Yeah, so I told her I was autistic, and she was like, oh. And I was like, I am. Like, I have a diagnosis. And even if I just said I was without explaining I had a diagnosis, you should understand that, really. I'm not questioning our experience or diagnosis, because I think we know better, than other people about our experiences.
Because what you think, the way things work, if you are applying some sort of average or whatever, that just does not work. Because you're going to get somebody like me who's ADHD and autistic, and you're like, wow, you just can't seem to pay attention. I thought you were all about hyperfocusing. And it's like, yeah, well, I'm more complicated than that. People are complicated. Give them the respect they deserve in viewing them as complicated.
For the non-autistic people going to try to befriend autistic individuals, you don't need to understand everything about them. Don't try to figure out all their issues and all that. Just let them know that you're here for them and that you understand them in a way that you can be there for them.